Well, I'm delighted that we've got Adrian Gardiner, who's the executive chairman of the Mantis group on the Hospitality Tomorrow Gives series. And I'm here with Anita Mendaretta, special advisor to the Secretary General of the UNWTO as well. Welcome, Adrian. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you for having us. I feel very privileged to be on this, and I hope that I can add some valued contribution to our discussion today.
Well, that's excellent. Adrian, one of the reasons we're doing this is to really learn from those industry leaders that are taking a leadership position when it comes to frontline staff, and we wanted to learn from you what you're doing with your frontline staff at the moment, and perhaps you can kick off and let us know what you're doing.
Thank you for that. Yes, it's an interesting one because obviously with, over the last few months, we had 100% of our properties closed. So really, in terms of our direct employees, they weren't involved in the front line. All we did was to make sure that they were looked after carefully and that we managed to supplement their wages or whatever the government didn't give them. So that from that point of view, but with the Community Conservation Fund Africa, the CCFA, we had an initiative that we started, that our executive director started, in that we used to, and I'll tell you how it all happened. It was quite an interesting thing. I was having lunch one day with a friend of mine in London, and he was telling me how Kentucky Fried Chicken had raised a considerable amount of money by adding, I think in your country, maybe 20p, or in our country, 2 Rand onto every parcel that was bought. And the amount of money raised in South Africa was phenomenal. So I went back to our hotel in London, the Draycott, and I said to my manager, would you please go and find me a tiny fluffy rhino? And I put that on the bed, and I would write a letter to you to say, dear Jonathan, thank you for choosing to stay with us at the Draycott Hotel, but regrettably I'm an orphan. Would you mind adopting me and taking me home? Because my parents have been killed, and we developed that sort of project on all our hotels and different animals like our gorilla in Rwanda and everything. And then we got these all made by a community in Stellenbosch in South Africa. And we were sending them around the country. And then all of a sudden, COVID came. Bang, and those poor people were without a job. So then we came up with the idea, well, let them get into business straight away and make the mask. So we made a whole lot of masks, and we managed to sell all these masks at a premium to the big corporates, but the premium was used to give those masks to all hospital employees and all frontline employees in hospitals. And it had a major effect. We were able to supply those masks quickly. We were able to give employment to those people who had helped us in conservation and now were helping directly in the front line. So that was quite something to see. The tears that came from those sort of things. Just a little thing like that, Jonathan, was quite amazing. So we've sort of developed that sort of ethic in the CCFA to see how we can help on the front line.
It's fascinating to hear what you're saying, Adrian, from the point of view of how you went into mask development and PPE ultimately as a way of supporting frontliners, because that's often not what people think of. Are there any other elements that you are doing in terms of supporting frontliners through this COVID-19 time, especially tapping into what you've done, which is mobilizing SMEs to keep them busy at the same time as making a difference during COVID-19?
I think the other initiative that we came up with, and I think Jonathan will know about it, is that there's a fund was created by Accor, which, as you know, is our partner, called the Heartist Fund. And the Heartist Fund was to support our employees who basically were on unpaid leave or absent or weren't getting a full wage and everything. And that was supported by supplementing their wage. But more important than that for us in terms of our front line and what we were trying to protect, being involved in nature reserves and wildlife, obviously with people not having any food, what would be the community, what would they do? They would obviously have to resort to poaching to get food. So what we did was, with the Heartist Fund, we established food parcels. So we gave all our staff food parcels, and that was really frontline work because we were delivering these food parcels on a monthly basis and we wouldn't go into it. So we got NGOs who were qualified in doing it and knew how to do it safely. And the effect that that has had is absolutely amazing, because that food parcel would probably keep a family of 4 or 5 going for at least a month. So, you know, we've done things that might be small, but they're very big in terms of the heart and what we're saving and the people, and just making sure those poor people that are in the front line, because they're not getting any sort of employment or wage. And I think the effect of that has been quite phenomenal. And we've done it in Namibia, we've done it in Rwanda, we've done it in South Africa. So it's quite something that we were managed to do in terms of just giving money to give food parcels as well.
Indeed.
Adrian, sorry, Anita, Adrian, is this with your staff at Mantis, or is this also with the communities as well?
No, in terms of that fund, obviously it's to our staff, but we are protecting all the people that are involved with our staff. So it's all their families. So, you know, if we, for example, I mean, at the one game reserve, we employ 120 staff. Just multiply that by a minimum of, say, 4 or 5. So in the region, we were helping some 500, 600, 700 people, but that has grown so much that I think we've managed to, with other people contributing, to affect 5,000 people in that particular area. And obviously, it stopped the poaching and whatever else might have gone on in our wildlife areas.
Adrian, you've hit on something quite critical, because every single country in the world is going through COVID-19 at some stage. Every single country is going through it differently. And you've tapped into the fact that with South Africa still on the way up the curve and trying to manage it, having gone through the start of COVID-19 later than, for instance, Asia, the needs are very different. And the economic framework of South Africa is very different. You're commenting about creating, the masks and the food parcels demonstrates the multiplier effect of what you've been doing. As I mentioned, we're in a situation in South Africa where you're still on the up curve. The fear of the second wave is around the world. What do you see going forward around the need for continued support of initiatives of these kinds, and why you felt it was important for instance, getting involved with HTGives as a vehicle of not just gaining awareness, but gaining support for what is clearly a year of challenge for South Africa and the world?
Thank you. A very interesting question. I think what happened in South Africa was this, is that first of all, you know, we probably had one of the most strictest lockdowns in the world in terms of, you know, we couldn't travel. We had this ban on liquor. We had the ban on smoking. And the effect of that in terms of loss of jobs and everything has been absolutely phenomenal. It's sad to see. But it's not only job losses, it's an incredible amount of revenue that's been lost in terms of taxes and everything else that goes with those two industries. And it's been quite sad to see. And a lot of us have not been able to really see the logic behind it. And, you know, then obviously, you know, the bootlegging started, the undercover trade and all the rest of it. So what's happened, and you're probably aware of it, but as of this morning, from midnight last night, we're down to level 2, which means that those trades have been opened. You can smoke and you can drink again. And secondly is that we're allowed to travel internally. So there's a big push from private enterprise to rebuild the economy. And, you know, if, our economy is totally shattered at the moment. And I'm sad to have to say, but not only that, is that, you know, we've experienced a certain level of corruption, which thankfully our government is taking note of. But I think the sadness of it all is that the job losses are phenomenal. And your question is, how do we go forward in supporting those people and getting their jobs back? I'm not sure that there is a short-term answer for that. And that's just yesterday when I was driving around to a meeting to see those poor people queuing up for, might call it furlough payments or unemployment insurance fund payments. It's something that, you know, I don't believe the world has seen it before. We certainly haven't seen it in Africa. We're really on the back foot, but I think that at least our government has come to the stage now where we're trying to open up the economy, trying to get the jobs back, trying to do something. But until we get international travel, our business as Mantis and our borders reopen, we've got a problem. And that problem then revolves around the people that we employ. So it's a tough one. I've got no answer for you. I don't think the world has an answer, but let's just hope either that there's a vaccine or we do get on top of the curve. But as we've seen in the UK, where you guys, I think, are speaking from, you know, all those countries that were suddenly put under quarantine again, and you have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back. I mean, it just puts a curb on travel, and that has an effect on the economy. So I would just like to say that thank goodness I'm not in government, because I don't see the answer to reviving this in the very short term.
Indeed.
But I would also just like to add another initiative that was done here. And, you know, private enterprises really got involved. I'll give you a good example. The head of Volkswagen here, who is very involved with us in conservation, and he's just been moved to a big job in Europe. But they gave up a whole factory that wasn't being used here, and they converted it into a hospital with 4,500 beds. And it was all done within about a month. You know, so there has been a lot of initiatives where private enterprises try to help in terms of the medical side of the tragedy that is surrounding us.
Indeed. Excellent.
Interesting. Adrian, is there any examples of great leadership that you've seen taking place outside yourself, of course, and what you're doing with your staff during this lockdown period?
I think I'd like to give you two great examples of that. The one is a guy called Lungile Pipita, you know, who is the executive dean of the Nelson Mandela Bay University, and relative to medicine. And he put himself right in the front line. I was really keen to see that things were done properly. Sadly, he got COVID and died. And then we had somebody else recently, the new chairperson of the South African Council for Medical Aids. He also put himself in the front line and lost his life. So we've seen individuals giving up their lives to save other lives. And again, I refer to that incredible example of Volkswagen, what they did. So there's been a tremendous number of people that are really giving up their lives to try and save others' lives. And, you know, it's such a funny virus, because, you know, I just saw somebody, a colleague of ours in his 90s the other day, he survived it. And his wife, who's 80-odd. And then you see somebody who's late 30s dies. So, you know, what is the answer? I don't know. But there's a lot of people that are really giving up time, their lives, to try and get to the bottom and try and save as many people as possible. It's tough going.
Adrian, I must say, before we close off and I hand it back to Jonathan, it's been such a delight listening to you, hearing what your perspective is. And as someone who has South Africa as their second home, clearly your blood is green. And you are looking at this challenge as one about every South African. Thank you for sharing on Hospitality Tomorrow Gives. Thank you for what you are demonstrating as different ways of not just supporting, but not forgetting, because this is going to be a long journey. And the more we can keep doing without getting fatigue of it is critical, because as you say, there are people who are stepping up and have lost their lives as a result of them trying to protect us. So from my side, I thank you genuinely, and I now hand back to Jonathan.
Great,
if I could just answer that quickly, Jonathan, because, you know, what you said there, it's a long road, you know, and I've climbed many mountains in my life, had a lot of problems, but problems are normally an opportunity in disguise. This problem is more than a disguise. You know, we're climbing a mountain and there's no view. So that's the sadness of us. I just can't see the end. We can't see the end of the tunnel. We can't plan for a renewal. So that's the toughness of this situation.
Adrian, yeah, thank you so much for joining us on Hospitality Tomorrow Gives. We love what you're doing with all your various initiatives, the CCFA on conservation in the community, which is a big focus for you. And do tell us a little bit more about the charity where people we can facilitate fundraising for the frontliners.
Thank you, Jonathan, and I really appreciate that your commitment to this and trying to help us. And every time that you've spoken with me, you always bring it up and give me an opportunity to talk about it. But before I go there, I just want to also compliment you, and I've obviously read the email about the AHIC insights, you know, going forward. And if it's at all possible, we'd like to make a contribution towards that, because I think saving our planet going forward is very important. I've always said it's our planet, our gift, and our responsibility. So, you know, with the Community Conservation Fund Africa, is that one of the specifics when we joined up with ACOR was to involve them, and especially their loyalty program, you know, because they've got 60 million members without China. And, you know, I've always said to them, and, you know, wherever I meet somebody who's got points, I'll just say to them, would you burn $1 worth of points towards what we're doing? You know, it's not a big deal. And I think the other day you said to me about Lady Gaga, who had 120 million followers, and asked me what I would do. And I said the same thing to you. I'd ask every follower of mine to make a contribution. And, you know, if we can get real money, we can make a contribution. And Jonathan, Africa, without its wildlife, why would you come here? I mean, it's phenomenal that 90% of the first-time travelers that come to South Africa do a game experience. And it's not only South Africa, it's Africa. And I'll give you one of the best examples. What do you know Rwanda for? I guarantee you'd say the gorillas, what they've done there, that gorilla experience there, how they've portrayed it, how they've got it going, how they've involved their communities in protecting those phenomenal animals is a leaf that we should take out of their book. It's, for me, a country that I get inspired by. Their leadership inspires me. What they do inspires me. And we're very involved there. And we just wish it could happen in the rest of Africa.
Well, I think, Adrian, with what's with lockdown and COVID, I suspect your model of wellness, of conservation, of experiences is going to be at the leading edge of the hospitality industry going forward. But Adrian, on behalf of all of us, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your absolute inspiration. I say that every time I speak to you, you're absolute inspiration. But thank you for joining us, and we shall no doubt be seeing each other very soon.
I hope so. I really do hope, both of you. I mean, I just really do hope that we meet. You know, I just can't wait. I mean, I've been locked down. I haven't left Port Elizabeth for now. I think this is week 24. I've never not traveled in 24 consecutive weeks. And by the way, I'm still happily married after 52 years, after being out for 24 weeks. But anyway, it's a journey that I wasn't expecting. We're trying to make the most of it. We're trying to be positive. And you know, while you say, you know, you enjoy chatting to me, I must tell you that the inspiration I get out of chatting to you and people like Anita and seeing your passion for the future and trying to make the future something that we can all look forward to, a deep, deep thank you from my heart.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.